Learning how to code is hard. It is challenging, but it is doable. And I've stopped and started my journey so many times, countless times over the years. And there have been things that have stood out to me that I was probably doing that made my journey a lot harder that I want to share with you today in hopes that you can learn from my mistakes and make your journey a little bit more easy. So throughout the video, as I name these things, I want you to ask yourself, are you doing these things yourself? Because you may find that these might be the reasons why it seems so hard to learn how to code on your own. The first thing we're going to talk about is not having an end goal. So you start to learn all these languages at one time, or you start to learn languages unnecessarily, things that don't even have anything to do with what you really want to do in the tech industry. And so for me, for example, I want to become an interactive developer. Right now, my full-time job is as a front-end web developer, but I want to become more of an interactive developer, creative developer, which is someone who implements all those things of front-end, so your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but they also integrate things like 3D technologies, 3D modeling, animation, things like that to make the websites even more interactive and appealing to the customer or whoever is on the inside, the receiving side of the project. That's what I want to do. So I know that I have to get stronger in JavaScript, my HTML, CSS, those things, but I also need to start tackling other technologies within the 3D space. So having a clear end goal has allowed me to then further, create a curriculum for myself that makes more sense, that I can easily follow because I can see the end of the road. I'm not just learning blindly just for the sake of people saying, oh, you should learn Python or you should learn this. But it's like, is this actually going to apply to something that, one, I'm actually going to love to do, and two, something that I want to do? If I don't want to really focus on, Android development, I might not need to learn Java. Or if I don't want to do Apple development, I might not need to learn Swift. So just knowing and having a more clear view of what you want to do can help save a lot of time and headache. The second thing we're going to talk about is watching too many tutorials or getting stuck in what everyone calls tutorial hell. Just not creating your own projects. Create your own projects, create your own projects. Please create your own projects. This is something that is a huge struggle. I understand. Trust me. I feel like the only reason that I'm able to do things from scratch is because I'm actually working in the field now. But to actually start your own projects can be a little intimidating because you feel like, well, I don't even know enough about what I'm learning. Where do I even start? And we can, make that its own little video because that's something that I know a lot of people, myself included, have struggled with at the beginning of their journeys. But I'm telling you, creating your own projects and getting out of watching too many tutorials is really the only way you're going to learn, because you're watching tutorials, you're kind of going step by step with what they're doing, which is fine in the beginning. It allows you to kind of understand the concepts, the basics of the language you're learning, but you have to then go and do your own thing so that you can learn how to apply those things and why you're applying those things. So learn the basics, get comfortable with the basic concepts, then take those, plan your own project, start your own project. Even maybe go to places like GitHub and look at people's source codes for different projects that have been created and start to reverse engineer those projects. What makes that project break? Why were certain things applied in this project to get it to work? Just start to think about the different things that, make up that project. And you might start seeing things that you learned before, and then it'll click like, oh, that's why you use those certain things that you learn. Also, try to get into the habit. I heard this habit really recently on 2 different videos. I will try to find them and link them in the description. You guys know I like to leave little resource gems in my description box. So check out my description box always, guys. But I heard 2 YouTubers, both who've learned how to code on their own, who are very successful freelancers now, say the same thing, which is learn to look up things as you go. So instead of trying to follow a tutorial step by step and do every single thing that they do step by step, start your project. When you get to a certain point where you don't know how to do anything, so you've built out your skeleton, you've built out your layout, you have your HTML, you have your design, you have your CSS there. Now you want to create a scroll bar that lights up as you go down the page. You need to go find that on your own. Use things like Stack Overflow, read documentation on JavaScript, look at CodePen, use your resources, get familiar and comfortable with Google searching what you need to find, because that is going to be a huge tool in your tool belt when it comes to being a programmer, is learning how to find answers on your own. So I'll give you an example of how this worked for me. I was building a weather app. I was following the tutorial and I created the HTML, CSS. We did the JavaScript, but for some reason, whatever API they were using, I could not get the API to work. So instead of just giving up on the project or saying like, let me go to another weather app tutorial that uses an API that I know will work, I went and researched, why does this not work? Why is not, what's causing this error? The error that I was getting in my terminal, I went and searched that error, and it turns out to be something called cores. So then I learned about cores. And then from there, I learned that the API that was being used probably wasn't even the best API anyway, because of where they were, on the map. They were in Europe. I'm in the United States. And so I went and used an API that I know would work for pulling data from my country. And I was able to figure that out by Google searching and then implementing that information. But that's me taking what I need. I needed at that point an API. That's all I need. I don't need to go watch a whole new weather app tutorial. I just need to figure out what API to use and how to implement it into my project. Let's talk about finding resources that already have communities built into them, where you have people you can ask questions and also get peer review maybe on your projects. I'm talking about platforms like Instagram, things like Discord, meetups. Find these courses and these resources that have communities already built around them. For instance, there is a course, a platform online called Zero to Mastery. I know for a fact they have a Discord channel where you can go and join the Discord, and you have a pool of people who are, a lot of them are going to be in the same place as you, where they are just starting to code. They're at the beginning of their journey. They might be a little intermediate, some advanced, but you have this pool of people that has already been created. This circle of people has already been created for you. And you can jump in there and ask questions, and most time get real time answers, instead of like, sometimes posting to some boards like Stack Overflow and maybe even LinkedIn or Reddit. It might take a while for somebody to see your question and then answer it, but usually within like Discord channels, you can get real-time answers. I told you guys before, there was someone that I follow on Instagram that helped me. I posted, I think on my story, that I was having issues with some project I was doing. This has been months ago, but this person reached out to me and found the error like that, and I was able to fix it and move on. So find your community. You don't have to do this alone, guys. And I know that it can be intimidating to ask for help, and you want to learn this stuff on your own, but please know that nobody learns this stuff on their own. Somebody, people have to break down and ask people questions and ask for help. It is okay. Okay, now let's talk about how long you should be coding. First of all, I personally feel like you should code every single day, but also watch how long you're coding within those days. I have for the last few months been coding like nonstop every single day for 8 hours plus. And I found that that is a recipe for burnout. One, I'm coding as my actual 9-to-5 job. So I'm bound to be coding for hours anyway. But then sometimes I would come home and code throughout the night, and then I'm coding on weekends. So know your boundaries. Know when too much is too much. Maybe start with 1 to 2 hours of code every day. But I do highly recommend that you code every single day, because this is something that is practice based. You have to practice this skill to get it under your belt. This is just like any other sport. You won't go out expecting to be a LeBron James playing basketball, and you don't play basketball every single day. It's just not going to happen. You have to work your memory out. You have to work out your mind. You have to get that logical thinking going. And this is something that you have to implement daily. But like I said, make sure you're not doing too much, because you don't want to get burnt out. And then you take breaks, and then those breaks become extended breaks. And then you have to start all the way over because you've forgotten everything that you worked so hard to learn. So I want to give you a perspective of like how I'm trying to think of learning how to code. Learning how to code is like a baby learning how to speak a spoken language. They are not going to be fluent right away. It takes a long time for them to be able to start speaking themselves, becoming fluent, understanding and applying the things that they are hearing to what is an actual object, or however that works. But coding is really no different. You're going to have to take time to learn it. You're not going to be fluent at the beginning, but it is something you have to immerse yourself in every day. A baby is immersed in whatever their first language is every day. And that's how they slowly start to become fluent within that language, and they start to click with different things and piece things together. It's the same with coding. Immerse yourself every single day. Don't worry about your fluidity with the language at the points that you're at, but know that eventually you will become fluent and things will become second nature. All right, computational thinking. Guys, computational thinking, logical thinking is so underestimated and I think overlooked as far as what we talk about when it comes to learning how to code. We often focus on the resources, the techniques, the concepts, the syntax. We talk about all those things, but we never talk about computational thinking and logical thinking. You have to be pretty strong at that aspect of the game. And honestly, I will argue, like I've said this before, but computational and logical thinking is more important to me than syntax. Because if I can learn the syntax, I can see examples of the syntax all day, but if I don't understand why that stuff works or how the computer works, or different things that make up the logic and how to create the solution to the problem, I can't even begin to write the code. If I don't understand how to break down that problem into terms that a computer, like steps that a computer will understand, how am I going to create a solution and actually code it out? It's not going to work. And I've learned this is so important to me. And as you can see, I'm very passionate about this part, because this has been my biggest struggle within my new job, is breaking down the problems into proper steps and then applying the proper steps to get to the solution, if that makes any sense. So based on my experience, the things that I would recommend to do is to, pick your language, learn that language, learn the basics, the concepts, maybe watch a few tutorials, do a few of your own projects, and then start to find resources that will help you become a better computational logical thinker once you have a kind of an idea of how the syntax works within the language you chose. So of course, I'm going to leave the resources that I'm going to mention right now in the description below. So please make sure you guys are checking my description box. I leave a lot of things down there for you guys. But the two things that I recommend is one, a book called Think Like a Programmer, and the other one is Harvard CS50. So I was on Reddit and I saw a really great tip about how to approach Harvard CS50. The first time I took Harvard CS50, I was actually doing the assignments. I was actually going through the motions of how the course is actually laid out. But I saw this comment on maybe approaching Harvard CS50 in a sense of you only watching the lectures and maybe reading through the notes that are provided for you throughout that course, instead of like actually focusing on doing the actual assignments, because Harvard CS50 is a really, really good resource to teach you how to start thinking like a programmer, how do computers work? What is binary? Like, what are all these things, different switches, and how does this computer actually work? Because you do kind of need to understand the computer to be able to speak to it. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. So if you're overwhelmed, maybe don't focus on doing the assignments at all. Just really watch, listen to, and understand the lectures, read through some of the notes that are provided by them, and start to understand how computers work in general. Now, CS50 does start with learning about the C language, and the book How to Think Like a Programmer is based on C++. So it might not be a bad idea to use both of those resources as your actual curriculum. You'll have CS50 with lectures, notes, and assignments where you get the practice, and How to Think Like a Programmer where you're learning how to think like a programmer. You're learning about computational thinking and how to solve problems, which is so important. So having those two as your base is really not a bad idea, especially if you are someone who may be undecided as to what you want to do in tech. As from a coding standpoint, you may not know what language you want to start with because you really don't know what you want to do. Start with that. Learn C and C++, learn that world, and you'll start to see that if you want to pick up Python or JavaScript later on, how it might make it easier to start picking up those languages, because there's outside of syntax, there's a lot of similarities in what you need to do for these coding languages. So that's just a tip. Now, before we jump into the last and what I feel like is the most important point in this whole entire video, be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you are finding it helpful so that the algorithm knows and we can help other people. And also be sure to subscribe to my channel if you are interested in content on tech, self-discovery, self-learning, and productivity, because that's what I love to share on this channel. And don't forget to hit the bell notification so you don't miss a video. I am trying to post on this channel every single Monday, and I would love to have you a part of this community. Now, the biggest reason, in my opinion, that people find it so hard to learn how to code and to stick to and not give up is you. It's me. It's us. It's ourselves. And what I mean by that, it's the self-doubt, it's the self-sabotage, it's the negative talk, the negative mentality, the imposter syndrome, and all those other things. When you go into this space of learning how to code, already doubting yourself and saying, this is too hard, I cannot do this, you've already defeated yourself. I work around some of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. These people are really good at what they do, and they've been doing it for a long time. So I do have to think about that too. I'm still a baby within my tech career. These people have been doing this stuff for 15, 20 plus years. And so take a step back and just appreciate where you are and understand that this is where you are and that things will only get better. Now, I do want to point out something that one of my coworkers, one of those super smart coworkers I was talking about, did mention to me. I was working with him on learning about hardware and different things. I actually was just helping him with something. We ended up talking and learning a ton about hardware. And one thing he told me that stood out that I want to share with you guys is that he mentioned how people are always amazed about how he knows so much about hardware, how he knows about how this cord works with this thing and whatever he does. I'm not really good with hardware, but he said people are so blown away by that. But his response to that is always, another man made this. Somebody, another human being has already created this. So it's figure outable. Everything is figure outable. So somebody has already created this code, which means that it is possible. It's something that you can learn. It's just about how do you approach it? What is your perspective and your attitude towards learning that thing? But it's already been learned. It's literally possible to learn because another human being has already created it and done it themselves. So I feel like all of this is mindset. And once you start to shift your mindset to a more positive one, and you start to see different perspectives, such as the one that I just shared with you, that people have already done this. This is not something that you are recreating or reinventing. You start to maybe see a pattern of being able to have a clear mind to then, open up yourself to learning the material that you're trying to learn. So days that I feel like I don't want to go to work, or like not necessarily not go to work, but I'm intimidated by going to work because I feel like I'm just taking too long on projects, or things are just not clicking as hard for me. When I switch that mentality to, hey, no, I'm going to go, I'm going to be calm, I'm going to be at peace, and I'm going to do the best that I can. Those are the days that I learn more. Those are the days that I get through problems quicker. And those are the days that I leave work and I come home and I'm like a little kid talking to my fiance saying, I felt so smart today, and sharing the things that I learned because he's in tech too. So just try to change your mindset. And I promise you guys, it is like the biggest hurdle, but you can't start with the things that I mentioned at the beginning of this video without starting with yourself first. Are you in a mindset where you feel confident and, have a can-do attitude? Because it does start there. It really does. Start with your own mindset and see how far that takes you. All right, that's going to wrap up this video, guys. I am so happy that you made it to this point. Don't forget to look in the description box, because most things that I talk about in my videos, I always leave them down in the description box because I want to provide these resources for you guys. I am so proud of you guys wherever you are on your journey, and I'm so happy that you decided to join this community. I hope to help you guys more and more. I love helping other people, and I love to share the things that I learn along the way. Again, if you are interested in self-learning, self-discovery, tech, and productivity type content, that's what I love to do and talk about on this channel. So consider subscribing and be sure to hit the bell notification so that you are alerted on Mondays when I post. I usually post Mondays at 1 p.m. if you want to be really specific. So be looking out for those videos. But until then, I will see you in the next one.